points also. So up next, we're going to talk about making LAMP in a cloud. And as I said, we need no introductions again, but this is Mårten Mickos. He was the CEO of MySQL between 2001 and all the way through the Sun acquisition. He is currently CEO of Eucalyptus Systems, and he is going to talk to us about MySQL and LAMP in the cloud. So let's welcome Mårten.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be back in Sakila land. Just wonderful. You know, the first MySQL conference we did in 2003, it had the highest rate of VCs ever at a MySQL conference because we were closing our B round, and they were all here because they tried to invest in MySQL back in 2003, with 600 attendees at that first conference. Is this mine? Oh, no. How about this? So I'll talk about the LAMP stack and cloud here today. And as Sarah told you, I'm nowadays CEO of Eucalyptus Systems. So if you will allow a short introduction to the company I'm now running. So Eucalyptus, which of course stands for an elastic utility computing architecture, linking your programs to useful systems. So if you didn't know, it used to be a research project. Now you know. This is evidence. It's the world's most widely deployed private cloud software platform. It's open source. It's GPL code. It's used by the leading gaming companies, leading government agencies, and leading brand owners. So whenever you buy wonderful Puma shoes on puma.com, know that you're being served by a Eucalyptus private cloud. We take very seriously the interoperability between clouds, and we're working closely together with Amazon Web Services. We implement the exact same semantics, which means that what runs on EC2 or Amazon Web Services in general runs on Eucalyptus, and what runs on Eucalyptus runs on Amazon. And it was wonderful just a few days ago to read that the guys who actually define what cloud computing means for this country, they have chosen Eucalyptus as their main cloud platform. This is on the web. If you check out my tweets, you'll find the link to that page. But this is NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, that is building their own cloud for their own purposes. There's a number of wonderful reasons to use Eucalyptus. You can download it, you can play with it, it's open source. We even have a community cloud running, so you can test it without downloading it. So I very much welcome you to do that. But let's talk about the LAMP stack. This is a picture we produced a few years ago at MySQL AB when we were competing against three big databases: Oracle, Microsoft, and IBM. And you know, people always said MySQL is just a glorified file system. And the Postgres guys always said, well, you may have the brand, but we have the product. And we were just laughing at all of that. Because MySQL, granted, had some limitations. We couldn't really scale up, so we learned to scale out. But that's how we became this very agile, fast-moving, quick animal, a dolphin. And that's what made MySQL suitable for the cloud infrastructure and suitable to use in cloud. And that's why these three old giants are not used in cloud applications anymore. The whole world is going online. The whole world is building web applications and mobile applications. And those applications are not using these old databases anymore. MySQL is the only surviving member of the relational era that makes it into this new world. I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but I hope you get the point. So how's the MySQL baby going? And if you allow, I'll give my personal assessment. As you know, I'm not related or linked to anything MySQL anymore, so this is completely ignorant in the sense that I have no inside information. But here's what it looks like when I drink my morning coffee and think about MySQL. Popularity-wise, I hear that MySQL is doing as well as ever. Downloads are as good as ever, maybe even higher. That's fantastic. The product, as Peter said, better than ever. So I congratulate Oracle on exactly following the roadmap that we made. and that we might not have followed every time ourselves, but at least we made the roadmap. So it's a fantastic engineering team they have there, and there's no question about the skill inside the engineering team led by Thomas Ullin at Oracle. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's GPL code. We should be thankful corporations paid $1 billion for the privilege to maintain a product that is freely available to all of us. That is fantastic. Business-wise, I see only smiles on the Oracle salespeople when I talk to them. They refuse to tell me how well they are doing, but they are difficult to hire. I try to hire them, and they refuse to leave, so they must be doing well. Partner ecosystem, I give an arrow down for it. I know there are very successful MySQL partners in the ecosystem, but I think Oracle should promote them, resell them, and build out and make sure that the ecosystem thrives so that people know that building a business around MySQL makes wonderful sense. So although many are doing well in that ecosystem, I don't think it's good enough. I think we should have higher requirements, higher demands on it, because it's the ecosystem that drives any business today. When it comes to community, Oracle certainly has some fantastic community managers working there, and kudos to them for what they are doing. But there should be more of them, and other people at Oracle should speak up for community values. They should be more open about their bugs and how they deal with them. So I'm not giving them a good grade here. But what happens with open source is, of course, if the main steward of a project doesn't take care of something, somebody else will. And here's evidence that everything is working, and even if Oracle did nothing, it would still work. So that's why community is doing well after all. And interestingly, the community isn't very fragmented. I know that it can be traumatic and sensitive for some of these companies to figure out whether they are friends or foe and do they compete or not. But at the end of the day, when you have a product under the GPL license, it does enforce a certain unification that is good for everybody. And there are mechanisms for dealing with differences. Who gets to speak at whose conference and who can sponsor what on. I don't know all those issues that may exist, but it's a surprisingly coherent and consistent ecosystem still today. And there are lots of companies who can pick up if any of these would stop doing what they're doing. Facebook is probably the biggest driver of MySQL who is not MySQL itself. Google is a big user, Amazon is a big user, and so on. There's a lot of MySQL talent out there in the world. And a final note, MySQL, of course, always loved InnoDB. We would have loved to acquire InnoDB, but we didn't. But now they're back together, so it's like high school sweethearts getting together after many years and realizing that they work well together. So that is actually a very strong technical benefit to all of us. So then everybody's talking about NoSQL and NoSQL and not only SQL and all these new databases. And everybody is starting a new database company, and everybody thinks that they will be the next billion-dollar company. But it's Instagram. It's not the database companies. And why not? Because it takes such a long time to build a database. It's a 10-year development cycle to build a product. So look there, Oracle started in '77, and it took them 10 years to build it into a proper product and win in the market. And then they got 30 to 40 years of lock-in and wonderful business. I don't know how many yachts and jets fit into that bar there, but lots of them. But then nothing happened in the 1990s in the database arena. The MySQL founders already were working together, so you see that first box there is sort of the gestation period when you think about something but you're not doing it yet. They took a very long time to think about it before they started coding. But in the 90s, of course, we were busy establishing open source as a dominant practice. We were busy establishing the web. So everybody was busy, and no new databases were practically created. Or some people tried with object-oriented ones, but we know what happened to them. And then came MySQL, where coding started in 95, 96, and it took 10 years to get to 5.0, to get to a product that could span everything and take care of any workloads. And now MySQL has a business future of 20 to 30 to 40 years ahead of it. So no matter what happens with big data, no matter what happens with NoSQL, MySQL has a fantastic lifespan ahead of it still. We don't know how far it can go, how far it can stretch. The fact that it's open source may give it more lifespan because you guys can invent new storage engines when the old ones die away. You can build a new optimizer. You can add the new APIs. And then if we go into big data, Hadoop was in a gestation period 2002 to 2004, and then they started coding. And now it's a big, big thing. We know that Hadoop and big data is here to stay. And maybe the technology is not fully mature yet, but we're very close to it. So the question now is, did this go faster than before? And can that business grow faster than the MySQL business grew and the Oracle business grew? I don't think so. No matter how much we say that the world revolves faster now, building serious infrastructure software is just heavy, heavy work, and it takes time. And then we have the NoSQL entrance, and I just put the moniker NoSQL there. I'm sure you all have your favorite name to put there, whether it's Couchbase or MongoDB or Neo4j or whatever you have there, that are right now in the middle of that core development. And when you look at this picture, say, why is there so much now when there was so little before? And I think it has to do with the fact that the online world is expanding so rapidly that now we need many different types of data stores, even in the same application. So the whole notion of having a MySQL conference, maybe it's a little bit passé. Maybe we should have other databases here as well. And I bet that many of you who are end users who are running some amazing web application, it's not just MySQL you have there. You may have Sphinx, and you may have Cassandra, and you may have Memcached or whatever building around the database of your choice. So I think this fits into major infrastructure paradigm shifts that we have seen. And from my perspective, it started with the client-server revolution in the 80s. When we got the PCs, Microsoft grew up. Suddenly, computing was available to everybody. Not through networks, but just available. And the thinking around databases back then was scale up. You built a database, and then you put bigger and bigger iron underneath to make it scale more. The code was closed source. Nobody even thought of open source. I'm sure some thought, but it wasn't a big thing. And in terms of how it was distributed and dealt with, it was just monolithic binaries. It was everything in one go. The database companies had their own development tools, all packaged into a big, big product that they shipped and sold to you in boxes. Then in the 90s and the 2000s, we got into the web world, where suddenly we didn't scale up. We scaled out, which is what MySQL pioneered. So the scalability thinking was different. The code was suddenly open, and you won by having open source code, not closed source code. And everything was about the stacks and the distros. Why did MySQL switch to the GPL license in '99? To get into Red Hat and SUSE, the leading Linux distros at the time. The only way to reach out to developers back then was to be in a distro. And it didn't take long then until a German developer realized that, hey, this is LAMP. It's Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, or Perl, or Python. Perhaps it was the first stack, but I'm afraid it also was the last stack. We don't stack things anymore. Back then you had one Linux, one MySQL, one Apache, Apache, MySQL, one PHP. You probably didn't use other languages. Today, applications have many different languages, many different databases, and they're not stacked on top of each other. So the paradigm is changing again. So in cloud, and pardon me for my terminology now, because I lack terminology for it, but in the cloud, you must scale both up and out. For request weight and for latency, you scale up. Bigger VM, bigger instance to run heavier things. For request volume, you scale out. So you need to do both things in the cloud. Still, open source is the dominant design for infrastructure software, but suddenly it's all about the APIs. We have so many pieces of software interacting with each other that the focus is around the APIs, not around the source code. And I'm not saying that open source isn't important. It's hugely important. But now you must look at the APIs and think, okay, how do these things interact with each other? And it's not about stacks and distros anymore. You don't download a Linux today. You upload your stuff to Amazon. And on Amazon's service, there are 10,000 ready-made images for you to use, 10,000 distros, if you will, with different combinations of open source products that you can use. So it's, again, a completely new thinking and architecture for how to deploy applications. And of course, applications need databases. So that's why I think MySQL has a new role. And thank God we were so bad at scale up that we learned scale out, because that's what makes MySQL such a great workhorse in anything cloud. And even though people talk about all the new databases today, still all major web properties use MySQL somewhere. And I remember Facebook. How many times did they tell us that they would drop MySQL? And Thomas, how's MySQL doing at Facebook? Pretty good. So it's just living and surviving. But then interestingly, it's free and open source software. So Amazon runs something called RDS, Relational Database Service, which essentially is MySQL. That's the new place where it is. And again, thanks to Oracle for maintaining that development team that allows a company like Amazon to run it and sell it as a service. And my question to you is, if the MySQL installed base now is 15 million, 20 million, I don't know where we are, when will we come to a point where there are more MySQL instances on public clouds than there are MySQL installed base in the traditional sense? We are heading towards that point. And then MySQL is being augmented by all kinds of other databases in the same application. So caching, layers, full text search, all of these different categories. And this is still the confusion we have in the market. We were so comfortable for 20 years thinking that a database is a relational database. That's all I need to know, rows and columns and joins, and it's the SQL language, and I'm good. Now it's much more confusing because you have to choose between architecture and paradigm and way of doing this, and is it eventually consistent or always consistent, and how do you combine them and how do you scale them? So it's more complex, but you can also achieve much more today. And in terms of how you deal with databases, you have new challenges. You talk about auto-scaling, auto-recovery, automated updates. You have new ways of dealing with the database. And the actual MySQL binary is sort of becoming just a unit of computation. You don't need to go deep into it anymore because there are lots of great tools with which you can manage it, and it's a known entity. You know what you can expect from a MySQL database, and you don't need to know the inner workings of it because you can use other tools to manage it. And of course, MySQL today is serving not just web databases, but increasingly mobile applications. And that's where the big explosion is happening. We have 7 billion people on this planet, 3 billion are online now, but the other billions are coming. And they're coming with devices that are not desktop computers. They could be laptops, they could be other form factors, all the way from really small to really large, but they will come with a mobile paradigm, and they will connect to the internet through mobile connection. And that will change the whole architecture for how software is developed and deployed. Fortunately, MySQL has a wonderful position there still, now together with many other databases. So with that, let me stop here. There's my email address and my Twitter handler if you're interested, and I look forward to great discussions here at the conference and wishing you a great conference day. Thanks.